My name's Sarah. I've spent the better part of my life in the delivery room, helping mothers bring new life into the world. It was more than a job, it was my calling. But when you hit 65 and your health starts to tell you to slow down, you listen. So, I stepped back from the front line and shifted gears to consulting and administration at the medical center. I've always done whatever it took to provide for my son, Alex. Being a single mom wasn't easy, but seeing him grow into the man he has become makes all the sacrifices worth it. I sent him to the best schools, got him into hockey, though it turned out that wasn't his path. He found his passion in advertising instead, and now he's doing great, working as a hotshot at some fancy agency. Currently, my big old house is all torn up for renovations, so I've moved into this little apartment temporarily. It's nothing like home, but it's got 4 walls and a roof, and that's enough for now. Today's kind of a big deal. Alex is bringing over his fiancée, Emily, for dinner. He's talked her up quite a bit, beautiful, smart, and works with him. I'm a bit nervous, truth be told. This place isn't much to look at, and I want to make a good impression. I decide to cook my famous beef stew. Just as I toss the last potato into the pot, I hear a knock. Coming, I shout, wiping my hands on my apron as I head to the door. There's Alex, looking as handsome as ever, and with him, a very pretty young woman, Emily. Mom, this is Emily, Alex introduces her with a grin. Nice to meet you, Sarah. Alex has told me so much about you, Emily says. Please, call me Sarah. Welcome. I hope you're hungry, I say, leading them into the small dining area. I catch Emily looking around, her gaze lingering on the less than stellar furnishings. So, Sarah, Alex mentioned you work at the hospital. What do you do there? Emily asks as we sit down. I handle some of the admin work, I reply casually, not wanting to dive into my past life as an obstetrician. Alex shoots me a look, surprised I didn't elaborate. I give him a quick wink, silently telling him to keep it under wraps. There's no need to brag. Emily seems a bit taken aback. Oh, I thought maybe you were a doctor or something. The conversation moves on to lighter topics, but I can tell Emily is still sizing up everything. It's clear she expected something different. The apartment, my job, it's not adding up to her. As I serve the stew, I try to keep the atmosphere light. Here we go, my famous beef stew. It's not fancy, but it's got good, honest flavor. It looks delicious, Sarah, thank you, Emily says, though her tone suggests she's still distracted by her earlier thoughts. We eat, making small talk about their work and plans. I notice Emily's polite, but there's a coolness there, a distance. She's hard to read, but I'm no stranger to tough nuts to crack. Once they left, I sat back down, thinking over the evening. It wasn't perfect, but it's a start. Maybe Emily needs time to see beyond the surface. I'll give her that time. For now, I'm just going to clean up and get ready for bed. The next dinner took place 2 weeks later. They arrived just as I was pulling the chicken out of the oven. Alex, ever my pride and joy, greeted me with a big hug, while Emily offered a polite smile, her eyes quickly scanning the small, somewhat worn living room. Dinner smells great, Mom, Alex said, his cheer filling the cramped space. Thanks, hon. I hope you're both hungry, I replied, ushering them into the dining area. As we sat down, Emily's gaze lingered on the mismatched chairs and the second-hand tablecloth. I could almost hear her thoughts ticking over. Finally, as I began to serve the food, she turned to me with a question that caught me off guard. Sarah, I was wondering, how were you able to afford such a good education for Alex? Private school, hockey, must have been expensive, especially on a hospital administrator's salary. I paused, spoon midair, taken aback by the directness of her question. Not wanting to delve into my financial history or my past earnings as a top obstetrician, I opted for a simpler answer. Well, Emily, my parents left me a small sum. It wasn't much, but I stretched it as far as I could. Education was always a priority for us, I said, giving a slight shrug as if it were no big deal. She nodded, though her expression was pensive, almost skeptical, as she looked around the apartment again. Interesting, she murmured, more to herself than to me, her eyes scanning the modest decor. Dinner continued with light conversation, mainly driven by Alex, who seemed oblivious to the tension. After we finished eating, Emily excused herself to use the bathroom but wandered slowly, taking in every detail of the apartment. I took the moment to speak with Alex, keeping my voice low. Alex, I'd prefer if we keep the details of my financial situation and the house under wraps for now, okay? Alex laughed lightly, brushing off my concern. Mom, you worry too much. It's not like it's a secret or anything. Just humor me, son. And, please, take your time to really get to know Emily, I added, my tone more serious. Mom, I love her. She's the one, he replied confidently, his face softening as he spoke of her. I sighed, resigned that my advice might go unheeded. Just be sure, that's all I ask. When Emily returned, her demeanor had shifted slightly, now more composed, perhaps even more determined. The rest of the evening passed quickly, and soon they were ready to leave. Thank you for dinner, Sarah. It was lovely, Emily said, her voice polite but distant as she hugged me goodbye. Of course, dear. Anytime, I responded, watching them leave with a mix of emotions. After closing the door, I leaned against it, feeling a mixture of concern and frustration. Emily's questions, and her obvious disappointment with my current living situation, left a sour taste in my mouth. Wedding preparations were in full swing, and Alex and Emily seemed to be caught up in the whirlwind of it all. Invitations, venue bookings, menu tastings, it was a lot, and despite the tensions, I wanted to help. One afternoon, they came over to discuss some of the plans. I had made some coffee and laid out a few snacks on the kitchen table, a neutral ground of sorts. The apartment still wasn't much to look at, but I'd managed to make it feel a bit more inviting. So, we're thinking of having the ceremony outdoors, Alex started, spreading out some brochures across the table. That sounds lovely, dear. Where at? I asked, trying to keep my tone enthusiastic. There's a small vineyard on the outskirts of town. Emily fell in love with it, he replied, looking over at Emily, who nodded in confirmation. Yes, it's perfect, very picturesque, Emily added, flipping through a brochure to show me a picture of the vineyard. The place looked beautiful, no doubt about it. I can see why you like it, I said, smiling at her. It'll make for beautiful photos. Emily smiled back, briefly, before her expression turned more serious. We need to talk about the guest list, Sarah. We're trying to keep it tight, due to the venue size. Of course, that makes sense. Just let me know how many people I can invite. I don't need many, I reassured her, sensing where this might be going. Well, we were thinking, maybe if you could just stick to close family? We have a lot of friends and colleagues to accommodate, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. I felt a sting at that. Was I being edged out of my own son's wedding plans? But I held back, reminding myself this was their day. That's fine, Emily. You won't have any problems from me. Thanks, Sarah. We really appreciate it. Alex chimed in, clearly relieved that I hadn't made a scene. We went on to discuss other details, flowers, music, the wedding cake. I tried to offer suggestions, but Emily had clear ideas about what she wanted. Whenever I brought up something, she had a polite but firm way of steering the conversation back to her preferences. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself speaking less and less, feeling somewhat sidelined in the planning of my only son's wedding. When they were ready to leave, I offered to help with anything they might need, trying one last time to be involved. Actually, Sarah, I think we've got it covered. But thanks, Emily said, her smile polite but distant. We'll keep you updated, of course. Of course, dear. Just happy to help, I replied, keeping my smile fixed until the door closed behind them. I washed the dishes slowly, lost in thought, wondering how things would pan out on the wedding day. Would I just be a guest at my son's wedding, watching from the sidelines? The thought weighed heavily on me as I dried the last cup and turned off the kitchen light. Alex's birthday rolled around, and this year was different because I wasn't planning the celebration. Emily took it upon herself to throw the party. Somehow, my invitation got lost in the shuffle, or so I thought. The truth hit hard when a friend casually mentioned the big bash being set up at their place. I wasn't on the guest list, a fact that stung deeply, but I put on a brave face. My son's happiness was more important than my feelings, and I decided to drop by with a gift, uninvited but hopeful. I chose a classic gift, a nice watch I knew Alex had been eyeing for months. It was more than a gift, it was a token of my ongoing love and support, regardless of the chill that had crept into our relationship lately. The bonus to the watch was a bottle of good wine. I parked down the street and walked up to their house. The sounds of laughter and music spilled out from the backyard. Taking a deep breath, I opened the gate and stepped inside. Almost immediately, I felt like I was intruding. The yard was bustling with groups of Emily's friends and her family, people I barely knew, despite the impending wedding. Emily spotted me first. Her smile was tight, the welcome even tighter. "Sarah, this is a surprise. What are you doing here?" Her tone was polite, but the undertone was clear. I wasn't expected, nor particularly wanted. "I just wanted to wish Alex a happy birthday," I said, my voice steady, despite the chilly reception. "Oh, well, he's around here somewhere," she replied, her eyes scanning the crowd, clearly reluctant to guide me to him. Navigating through the clusters of guests, I finally found Alex. His face lit up when he saw me. "Mom, you made it. I thought you were busy today." "I couldn't miss your birthday, honey," I said, handing him the gift. His genuine smile as he opened it warmed my heart for a moment. We chatted briefly, a good moment in an otherwise awkward situation. But then Emily joined us, her smile forced. "Alex, babe, we need to get ready for the toast," she said, then turned to me. Her next words were low and clear, meant only for my ears. "Sarah, maybe it's best if you don't stay long. We've got a lot planned, and well, it's a bit crowded here." Her message was unmistakable, and the undercurrent of dismissal couldn't be ignored. I looked at Alex, hoping for some support, but he was already being pulled away by a friend calling for him. I nodded, gave Alex one last smile, and left. Walking back to my car, the sounds of celebration behind me, the hurt settled in deep. It was clear Emily saw me as an outsider, and her direct approach left no room for misunderstanding. The drive home was quiet, my thoughts loud with the harsh reality of my new place in Alex's life. Once home, the silence of my apartment enveloped me. I sat down, the unopened bottle of wine I'd brought as a gift for the party now just a reminder of the evening's rejection. I poured myself a glass, the wine bitter like the evening's experience. Only 3 days left until the wedding, and I thought I had seen it all, but I was wrong. That morning, a soft knock on my apartment door signaled an unexpected visitor, Emily, alone, without Alex. "Good morning, Emily. What brings you here today?" I asked as I let her in, surprised by her solo visit. "Sarah, we need to talk. It's about the wedding," she began, her voice steady, betraying a rehearsed confidence. I led her into the small living room, gesturing towards the sofa. "Of course, dear. What about the wedding?" She sat down abruptly across from me at the kitchen table, sliding the envelope towards me. "I think it's better for everyone if you don't attend the wedding," she started, her tone firm, leaving no room for arguments. I was stunned, barely able to process her words. "Excuse me?" I finally managed to say, my voice a mix of shock and disbelief. Emily sighed, as if she was explaining something simple to a child. "Here's $3,000. I think this will make up for any inconvenience." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Was she seriously trying to pay me to stay away from my own son's wedding? The audacity of it made my blood boil, but I knew I needed to handle this carefully. Quickly thinking on my feet, I pretended not to hear her properly. "What's that? You need to speak up, dear, my hearing isn't what it used to be." Emily's face contorted in annoyance, and she leaned in, speaking loudly and slowly, as if it pained her. I said, "You're a beggar, dressed tastelessly. It's embarrassing. You being there would ruin everything." Her words stung, but I needed evidence of this unbelievable interaction. While she was speaking, I discreetly turned on the dictaphone on my phone, hidden under some papers on the table. "And you should be thankful for this money," she continued, gesturing towards the envelope. "You can finally fix up this place, make it livable at least." I kept my composure, playing along. "Oh, is that right? Well, I suppose I should be grateful then." "Yes, you should," she replied, clearly relieved that I was agreeing. She pushed the envelope closer to me, eager to conclude her distasteful errand. I picked up the envelope, the crisp bills feeling like dirt in my hands. Emily stood up, smoothing her dress, looking satisfied with herself. "I'm glad you're being reasonable about this." "Oh, absolutely, dear. Thank you for your generosity," I said, my tone dripping with feigned gratitude. With a nod, Emily left my apartment, no doubt believing she had successfully bought my absence from the wedding. Once the door closed behind her, my act dropped, and the gravity of what had just occurred washed over me. I dialed Alex immediately, my fingers trembling slightly as I pressed the phone against my ear. "Alex, you need to come over now. It's urgent," I said, my voice tight with a mixture of anger and urgency. He could hear the seriousness in my tone. "I'm on my way, Mom. Hang on," he replied, and I could tell he was already grabbing his keys and heading out the door. The minutes dragged until he arrived. As soon as I heard the door swing open, I ushered him into the living room. "Alex, there's something you need to hear," I said, my voice steady, despite the storm of emotions inside me. I handed him the phone where I'd saved the recording of my conversation with Emily. His face was a mask of confusion as he listened, his brow furrowing deeper with each passing second. When the recording ended, he looked up, shock and disbelief written all over his face. I had no idea she could say such things. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I can't believe she'd do this to you. We need to expose her, show everyone what she's really like." "But how?" I had been thinking about this ever since I turned off the recorder earlier. "I have an idea. Over the years, I've helped bring hundreds of lives into this world. Many of those families still keep in touch, respect me for the work I did. What if we gather their stories? Show everyone how much I've been a part of this community?" Alex's eyes lit up with a mix of pride and hope. "That's brilliant, Mom. We could record some testimonials from your patients, even the people you've worked with at the hospital, and the mayor. You did help his wife when she was in labor, after all." Over the next few hours, we were busy. I contacted several of my former patients who I knew would be willing to speak on my behalf. Using Skype, I recorded heartfelt messages from these women, each sharing their stories about how I had helped them during their most vulnerable moments. The head of the hospital where I worked also contributed, praising my dedication and professionalism. Even the mayor made a brief appearance in one of the videos, expressing his deep respect for me both personally and professionally. By the end of the day, we had compiled a series of powerful, personal testimonials. Alex edited them into a single video, adding photographs of me at work, with patients, and in the community, images that painted a picture of a life dedicated to service and care. That night, I went to bed feeling a mix of nerves and determination. Tomorrow would be one of the most challenging days of my life, but also, perhaps, one of the most important. The day had arrived, beautifully set for a wedding that was supposed to unite two families. The venue was beautifully decorated, flowers everywhere, guests dressed in their finest. The air was filled with a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. Little did everyone know, the day was about to unfold in a way none could have predicted. As the time approached for the bride to make her grand entrance, a video was scheduled to play, a montage of Alex and Emily, their journey together leading to this day. I knew this was the moment I had prepared for, my heart heavy with the burden of what I was about to do, but firm in my resolve that it was necessary. I had the audio recording ready, the one where Emily had bluntly offered me $3,000 to not attend the wedding, to erase myself from this significant moment in my son's life. My hand trembled slightly as I switched the input from the scheduled video to the audio recording. The room went quiet, the chatter turning to silence as Emily's voice filled the hall, clear and undeniable. The shock was immediate. Murmurs spread through the room like wildfire as guests turned to look at each other, confusion and disbelief written on their faces. Just as the recording finished, Emily and her father started their walk down the aisle, unaware of what had just been played. The timing couldn't have been more poignant. Before they could reach the front, I switched to the video I had prepared, testimonials from prominent members of our community, patients I had helped during my career as an obstetrician. One by one, respected individuals spoke of their experiences with me, their words painting a picture of my life's work and dedication. The contrast between this and what Emily had tried to portray was stark. As the video played, I watched Emily's face. Confusion gave way to realization, and then to a kind of horror as she understood the enormity of her miscalculation. Her mother, sitting in the front row, burst into tears, overwhelmed by the scene unfolding before her. When the video ended, the room was thick with tension, a heavy silence hanging over us all. Then, Alex stepped up to the microphone, his face pale, but his voice steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what you had to hear today, and I'm sorry for what was meant to be a joyous occasion turned into this revelation." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I cannot marry someone who has shown such disregard for my own mother, someone who sought to humiliate her in such a callous way. Therefore, I am calling off this wedding. I apologize to all of you for any distress this has caused." He then turned to me, his eyes filled with a mix of emotions. "Mom, I'm sorry. I should have seen it, should have known. Thank you for everything. For your strength, your courage, and your unending love." The guests stood then, a round of applause filling the hall, not just for a ceremony, but for the truth that had been revealed, and for the respect they held for me and for Alex's brave decision. As the clapping slowly subsided, Emily fled the hall, her father trailing behind her, a broken attempt at a dignified exit. Standing there, amidst the chaos of a wedding turned upside down, I felt a surge of pride for my son. It was a hard, painful moment for him, but he had risen, shown real character. A few weeks after the incident, I heard from some colleagues that Emily had been spotted at the hospital where I work. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, maybe she was visiting someone. But then it happened again, and this time she made quite the scene. There I was, walking down the corridor, and there she was, her voice raised, causing a commotion. "You ruined my life," she yelled as I approached. "You couldn't stand to see me happy. You had to tear everything down." I stopped, shocked by her audacity. People were starting to stare, and I felt a flush of embarrassment. "Emily, this is neither the time nor the place. You need to leave," I said firmly, trying to keep my voice calm despite my racing heart. But she wasn't having any of it. "No. Everyone needs to know what you did. How you interfered and lied." Her accusations were baseless, her anger misdirected. Seeing no end to her tirade, I made a decision I never thought I'd have to. I called security, and they escorted her out. When she tried to come back a second time, I had no choice but to involve the police. They detained her briefly, warning her about the consequences of harassment. That seemed to scare her enough to stop her visits. After that, Emily disappeared from my life. Last I heard, she left the city, but I don't know where she ended up. Meanwhile, life at home finally found its peace. The renovations on my house were completed, and I moved back into my beautiful, tranquil space. The contrast between the chaos of the past and my serene home life was stark, and I appreciated my solitude and stability more than ever. 2 years slipped by quickly, and life brought happier changes. Alex, resilient and matured from his experiences, met someone new, a wonderful woman named Clara. They got married in a small, intimate ceremony, which was a joyous occasion, filled with love and genuine happiness. Clara is everything Emily wasn't: kind, respectful, and genuinely supportive of Alex and me. Now retired, I've taken to enjoying the slower pace of life. My days are filled with gardening, reading, and long walks. I've also started planning a trip around the world, something I've dreamed about for years, but never had the time or freedom to pursue. Despite the turmoil of the past, life had a way of moving forward, bringing new joys and challenges. I was ready for whatever came next, embracing each day with an open heart and an adventurous spirit.